Hello,
Hi.
welcome. This is the live Q&A Business Hysteria webinar that we're doing today. I'm with Meeta Sahni from
Hi,
Maine.
everyone.
Meeta and I thought it'd be a really good idea there's so much information going on there at the moment that we would just filter down some things that a lot of our clients are asking us about, sort of navigate through the maze of what's happening right now. What are people's rights? What is this 80% salary scheme? Various other bits and pieces. Meeta's going to sort of take you through what it is that we're going to be talking about today. My name is Tosh, by the way, for those that don't know. I'm an employment lawyer from Astute HR Limited. Meeta, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We hope this session is useful to you all. I'm Meeta Sahni. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the CEO and owner of the Maine Group. We are consultants in recruitment, and we help our network attract, retain, and develop people. Although at this time, I'm sure all of you are wondering, how do we navigate through these very unusual times? So our topics today are going to be around the 80% job retention scheme. We're also going to be talking about working from home with dependents, toddlers, teenagers, elderly parents. How do we do it? How do we try and maintain that professionalism? And then finally, we're going to be talking about how we use tech, not only just to keep in touch, but to keep the business alive, to keep culture there, and to keep everyone motivated when everyone is isolated at home. So we're hoping the session is going to be about 30 minutes. We might stretch to 40 if you guys have questions to answer.
What questions you've got?
But we are pretty short on time, so shall we jump straight into it, Tosh?
Well, before we do that, we've got a chat box on the right. So look, if you've got any questions as we're going through it, we'll be looking through those questions and sort of answering them ad hoc. There'll be a Q&A session at the end as well. But, feel free to ask whatever questions you need to. It is a whistle-stop tour. Look, it's only going to be 30 minutes. We're not going to be able to get through everything, but we're going to do our best in this time. This is actually going to be part 1 of 4 that Meeta and I are going to be doing every Friday at this time. Again, there's nothing in this other than to genuinely see how we can help provide more information for business owners in this type of situation and how we can move forward and help in any way forward, right?
Absolutely. And at the end of the session, we will mention it then as well, but we'll be sending you out feedback requests so that you can add topics that you're interested in, and we can really make sure that these sessions are tailored to what you need. So
this is also being recorded, so you'll get a copy of this if you've registered for this. Plus, you'll be getting a free furlough agreement and a home working policy, courtesy of Daniel Barnett, one of the leading employment law barristers. So that will be going out to you all as well as a sort of gift as part of this this webinar as well. So should we get stuck in?
Thank you, Tosh. Yeah, let's do this.
So what's the first thing we're going to talk about that we can help?
So tell us all about the famous F word. We hadn't heard this word a week ago, and then Rishi Sunak said furlough and the whole world went crazy. As a business owner, I'm sure some of the questions I'm going to ask are the questions on people's minds. It's around our people, around our talent, and what we do and how we get our businesses through the next few months. So tell us all about this job retention scheme, Tosh.
Yeah, so the word furlough, I don't know why they use words that, we have to all look up. Furlough is not a horse term. It basically means that there's, if you're an employee and you have no work to do and you are sitting at home. So it's an alternative, a scheme that the government provided as an alternative to making people redundant or even short-term laying off. Or even a short-time working, or layoffs. The way that the scheme works is that employers, first of all, have to have an agreement in place for employees that they are furloughed. So again, that means there's no work for them to do, and they're sitting at home not doing any work because of that. Okay.
Okay. Can I just check?
Yeah, sure.
When I asked you my initial questions, a lot of people talk about, well, it's not in my contract. So how do we overcome the fact that it wasn't necessarily something that we could have put into our contract to start with?
You mean furloughs?
Yes.
So furloughs is a brand new thing.
Okay.
It's not anything that we've ever done. It's not anything this is completely unprecedented. The scheme is actually a really good one and a really generous one. How that works in practice is a different thing. So you don't need to have this in the contract. The scenario is this. Employees have no work to do and employers can't pay them. Or employees have no work to do, employers can pay them, but there's no work to do. So the law says that if you are ready, willing, and able to work, you've got to pay an employee full time, full stop. So at the moment, obviously, people are not, there's no work to give them. So you have to have a separate agreement, which is called like a furlough agreement, which means during this period, you will be furloughed, which means you will be eligible for the coronavirus job retention scheme. What that scheme says is the government will pay, so either reimburse the employer if they've paid this during this period of time, 80% of their salaries, up to a cap of £2,500.
Okay.
So they have to be eligible for that. You have to show that they are furloughed. That period of time is only from the 1st of March for 3 months. And the first payouts should be due by the end of April, beginning of May, I suppose.
Yeah. So can I just also bring to light that just recently, and we said this, didn't we, when we were talking about doing this webinar, that things are literally changing daily and by the hour. And actually, just this morning, they're talking about temps also qualifying for this furlough scheme. Can you shed some light on that? So a lot of companies will have had temps in their organisations, ongoing, long term.
The type of status that the employee has is not, apart from having to be a PAYE employee, whether they are temps or whether they are full-time, the issue is, do they have any work to do? If they've got work to do, even picking up one phone call, they're not furloughed. Okay. If they're typing one tap on the computer to send an email out, they're not furloughed. There is no work for them to do, and they are sitting at home. It's actually a scheme that supports employees. It isn't there to actually support the employers, if you think about it. It actually keeps them, some employers, they can't afford to pay their staff, but they've got work to do. Maybe social media, they want somebody to do something to help them with their admin. But the minute they do that, they're no longer furloughed. So the employees are better off not working. Okay. So the actual purpose of the scheme is to keep them on board, that knowledge hub there. So then when we get through this on the other side, the staff are still there. Yeah.
Fantastic. So a question's come up from Eric. So Eric is asking, he's assuming, is this 80% taxable?
So it's a bit, there's some things that are unclear at the moment. Boris is I think it's a bit like Kennedy. I was saying to you earlier, Meeta. Yeah. I think it's like Kennedy just said, we're going to put a man on the moon. And NASA said, well, no one talked to us. And then they just made it happen. Yeah. And I think Boris has done the same thing with the HMRC, because they're building an online portal right now that should be coming up imminently, is all we're hearing at the moment. Yeah. So is it taxable? I think it shouldn't be taxable, because it doesn't make sense that you're making a repayment to companies to then take some money back as a tax. Yeah. I don't know. What we do know is that it's 80% of salary and employment costs. So that seems to include national insurance contributions and also seems to include pension.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's your question, Eric.
Hopefully it does. Let's see what he says. Okay, so we have another question. Can an employer reduce staff days to 2.5 days a week and then still claim the 80? I think I can answer that.
Yeah.
No.
The answer is no. The key thing, just keep it really simple. Furlough does not mean, or the scheme does not mean, that they do any work at all. It means that there's zero work. So if you're doing 2.5 days a week or part-time or working some days on and off, doesn't work like that. If they're going to become part-time employees, then you'll presumably pay them as that. But furlough means no work. They are sitting at home. It's an alternative to redundancy.
Yeah. So even though it's an alternative to redundancy, because businesses don't have work for these people to do, it can't, people who, and I just want to get this clear, because again, when you guys talk about it being an alternative to redundancy, what we want to know is that in 3 months' time, when this is over, these people are people that we have intended to bring back in as and when things get back to normal.
That's correct. That's exactly right.
Good. Exactly. I'm going to ask you another practical question now, which is that, as we're furloughing people, they're working at home, they're isolated. We don't want them to feel left out, but they can't work. Are they still allowed to get their emails? Are they still allowed to keep in touch? Like, what is the sort of line of working and just keeping in touch?
Well, the line is furlough means not working. Are they able to get emails? Of course, but they just shouldn't be doing their job. Are they supposed to keep in touch? Of course, keep in touch. There's no, this isn't well, it is, I suppose, social distancing. I was going to say it's the sort of policing, but it's not. No, they just can't do their job. They're just not supposed to do any work. And as a result of it, the minute they do start doing work, whatever that is going to be classified as, then that's going to be a problem. So don't send work emails, send personal emails, do all those sorts of things, right?
Okay, thank you. We are getting some good questions. So let me just have a look. Here's a good one. Can a director-only employee be furloughed if the company has no income but is still being controlled? That sounds really technical to me, Tosh.
So I think what they're saying is, so a lot of the directors have both status, right? Employee and the director status. So what that means is they have an employment contract and perhaps a shareholders agreement or something like that. Yeah. So they may be getting a salary. So what the question is can they become furloughed if they're not getting any work in? Any money in? Yeah. The key is not about getting money in. The key is about whether there's any work to do. I think if the business is still running, it's going to be virtually impossible for a director to say that they're doing nothing. Yeah. Maybe if they're a co-director, perhaps there's a lot of husband and wife operations out there. Maybe maybe one partner is the primary managing director doing the work, and the other one sort of supports. And if they're going to stop supporting, they could, in theory, be furloughed.
Sure.
But we're a little bit blind. I can give you a good idea, which is what I'm doing now. But until we get that portal, we won't know exactly what that means. But for directors, I would fairly be confident to say that I don't think so, because they're going to keep the ship going, aren't they?
Yeah, they do. And I'm getting an understanding of that. I'm sure every organization is putting the same questions. And I like the way you've made it clear. Is there work that these people can do? If there is, they can't be furloughed. It can't be done on a part-time basis. It's all or nothing. And
use the furlough agreement that we're providing, courtesy of Daniel Barnett. It's in writing. It's very clear. If you haven't already received that from us, you'll get that as part of this. And that makes it very clear. And obviously, if employees don't want to agree to it, they can be made redundant.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be made redundant. There's no jobs to go to.
Yeah. Okay, I've got another question, which is really relevant.
Debbie, I can see.
I'm sorry?
There's a question from Debbie. Is that the one you're looking at?
I was looking at Catherine. Let's look at Catherine, and then I'll come back to Debbie.
Yeah, sure.
That's the key one. So Catherine is asking, what about employees who are currently working their notice period, i.e. they voluntarily resigned before the pandemic? Are they still eligible to receive furlough?
Okay, so if they have voluntarily resigned before the issue is, what is the reason that they are no longer working? That is the primary criteria to determine whether they're eligible for not. If they're resigning and it has nothing to do with what the current circumstances are, well, that can still be effective. If they're resigning because if they are being terminated or would be terminated because there's no work to do, well, then that would be furloughed. So if they're working their notice period already and they resigned in circumstances where it had nothing to do with what's going on,
yeah,
they're not obligated to go through that process, because it wasn't a redundancy that they left for in the first place, I presume.
What if an employer wants to do that for somebody? What if, they are working out their notice, but they don't have a job to go to now? Can an employer legally furlough them?
No, the circumstances have to be, it's an alternative to redundancy. So if they were being made redundant, perhaps there might be an argument to show that they should be furloughed, but it's effective from staff that are affected by the situation from the 28th of February onwards. Otherwise, you could have people that may be fraudulent, that will start to put suddenly people on the books. Obviously, the HMRC are very keen to make sure that there's not going to get the mickey taken out of what this new scheme is.
Absolutely. And there's a question around the furloughing, which is, how about annual leave? And is it accrued at the contractual rate when in furlough status?
So if they go into a furloughed arrangement, then it is 80%. That is what the purpose of the scheme is. There will be a reimbursement of 80%. That is the key. Whether the company can pay the full pay, they should, because it's a contractual right. Yeah. It's a contractual right to pay full holiday entitlement during that period. So may well be that a lot of employers are giving them full pay for the holiday period and taking it now while they can get full pay, and then they'll get a reimbursement of 80%.
Yeah. Or if it's just accruing holiday, do they accrue it at the same rate?
Correct.
So perfect. Thank you.
They accrue at the same rate, but they'll only get 80% of pay.
Yes. Understood.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. There's also a question around the portal, which we may not have the answer to, which is this a portal for employers or employees?
So the scheme is available to employers. I know the benefit or the beneficiary is effectively the employees getting paid, or getting the company getting the money back, having paid employees, but it is employers who are supposed to progress that application through the portal.
Okay. All right.
Well, looking at redundancy right now, or if the employees looking at redundancy, the employers should be considering whether they should be furloughed or not.
Yeah. Thank you. Right. We are nearly 15 minutes in, so nearly halfway with a couple of other topics.
I can see there's loads of them. We're not going to get through them all, Meeta. Maybe we can come to a couple more at the end, perhaps.
Yeah, if we have time. Absolutely.
And just to make it clear to anybody that's listening, Meeta and I were very conscious that it was a very short a Q&A session, and what we're going to do is really make an effort to answer all of these questions, even if it's in a video afterwards or something to that effect. We'll figure that one out for you. Okay,
we'll make sure you get some clarity for all the questions you all have. Right, okay, so shall we move on to topic number 2?
So Meeta, tell me, how's it home with the kids?
Well, I have 2 tweens and a teenager. I know you have elderly parents, and I'm sure everyone out there might also be in a similar situation. So yeah, this topic is really relevant right now. Going into this, there were people that wanted to work from home and people that didn't, but right now we have had no choice. Everyone is at home, the kids are at home, the parents are at home, and it's one big house party. But
you call it.
trying to see it that way. But we have to maintain our businesses, our professionalism. You know, we all have careers out there and we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing by our work as well as our families. So we're really thinking about what tools, what structures do we put in place to help organizations and help their employees to get through this time. One of the things that I think is really key is communication. It's absolutely important that clarity is there from the beginning. So talk to each other, work out what good looks like. Don't expect a normal day's work to be done in the normal working hours now. Some people like to start at 6 or 7 o'clock. Tosh, I know you're an early bird. And others will have children that are of the age where, you know, they can't go to a room with a laptop, but they need their parents around. So let your bosses know. I think what's really great to see is how considerate people are being, how understanding employers are being. And likewise, employees are saying, I will make sure I get the work done. So it's keeping that line of communication open.
What I really love about what you mentioned to me earlier, Meeta, was the vibe. You tried to keep the vibe going by having, was it a drink of wine Friday or something like that?
Oh yeah, we're going to talk about that in the tech and business as usual section. Yeah, very much about keeping it business as usual is making sure that you're using the technology to give you the tools to do that. But one of the things that a few of our clients are doing, and this is not by any way a plug, but it is using virtual PAs to answer phone calls and look at emails. And that way, you know that if you need to step away to look after your kids, it may be that you decide to do half a day of that, where you have someone, you know, looking at your emails and taking your calls and fielding what is urgent and what you can come back to. So that's one of the practical steps that some people are doing working from home. Other things is making sure, you know, that you've got your kids understand your timing and importance of when you're available and when you're not, if they understand, and likewise with your parents. And really, what are the rights, Tosh? Because I know that, you know, in this environment, there are different rights available to people as well of working from home.
So the law says that you are employees entitled to take reasonable time off to care for a dependent. Dependent can be your spouse, your parents, your children. Reasonable is a dream word, isn't it? For lawyers, so we can sit there arguing what that means all day. But in the current circumstances, you know, we're looking at closures or school closures, perhaps even till after summer. So we're going to have the kids at home for the whole of the summer holidays, even. Yeah. So it could well be that it's a right that you let people, if they're not already, if it isn't superseded by being furloughed or redundancy or maternity or any other scenario, then you'll be looking at being at home because you need to care for your dependents. But that right is unpaid. Yeah. The time off is reasonable, but there's no obligation for the employer to pay an employee for that time off, if that is the reason that they're off.
So can I ask you a scenario where an employer and an employee have had a reasonable conversation, they've got the clarity, they're doing different hours to the normal hours, but after a couple of days or a week or so, the employer is seeing that the level of work and engagement that they would have liked to have seen and what was agreed isn't there. Can they ask that person to take shorter hours in the coming weeks? Is that something that an employer can request of an employee?
So there's two things you put up there. One is whether they're not performing.
Yeah.
If they're not performing, and there's work for them to do, and they're not doing what they should be doing, well, that would potentially be the same as if there was no coronavirus scenario. It would be a disciplinary matter. I'm not going to advocate everybody starts disciplining people at home, because the reality is people are not generally going to be as productive. You know what? It's better to be 50% productive than zero doing no work. So I wouldn't advocate it, but strictly speaking, that's right. If you're looking at reducing their hours, again, the circumstances have to justify it. So at the moment, if there's a scheme in place that protects 80% of, or sort of puts ring fences 80% of people's salary up to £2,500, I must be clear on what that cap is. Yeah. It doesn't make sense that they would agree to reducing hours or any of those sorts of things, because the cap is in place. Okay. So it's a matter of agreeing. I think, to be honest with you, I think that employees are going to work very hard when they're at home if there's work available. They want to keep their jobs. They don't want to be made redundant. You know, everybody's looking now that there's nothing out there in the market. So, you know, I know it's very easy for us to slip into the worst place assumptions and what people may or may not do, or they're sitting there watching, you know, Jeremy Kyle or whatever it is. But I don't think that's the case. I don't think it's the case.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the intentions and the mindsets of everyone who's working from home is to do their best and give their best. It's just making sure that understanding between employer and employee is really there, because as we know, so much of communication is body language, it's tone, it's words, it's things that we can't really bring to the table when we're all working remotely. Each other. I think that brings us onto the next topic, which is all around how we utilize tech to ensure that we keep it business as usual.
Now, you and I talked about this before, and I think I was very simplistic about the whole thing. I said, well, you've got a phone and a laptop, you work remotely, and that's it. And you said, well, actually, it's a bit more than that. So I like you did that one, Meeta.
Well, the basics are, can we keep in touch and can we communicate? But actually, I think in this time, it's key that we communicate with more mindfulness, and we really think about how are we engaging with our people? Are we keeping them mentally well? Are we keeping them supported? And are we keeping the business supported in the way that it needs to be as well? So the first thing I'm saying is, where we can, let's use video talking instead of just emailing. Emailing is great for information, but actually when you want to discuss something, let's talk. And one of the tools that I think has been really good for that, and by no means am I plugging anything, but just talking about trial and error and what's really working well out there in the market is Microsoft Teams. It allows you to video talk, it allows you to message, a bit like a WhatsApp group, but you can jump onto video straight away as well. So that's really good. I mean, the thing about that is that you only have 4 or 5 people, 4 people visible at one time, but as many can join in the chat.
We use Skype as well. Self-isolation, it doesn't need to be isolating. Sitting at home working alone without any interaction with your colleagues or anything else, it can do that. I have Skype open all day, pretty much. Not to keep an eye on anybody, just so we can see each other. We just talk when we need to talk, trying to recreate that sort of environment. Yeah,
some of our clients are doing a Monday morning. It can be a touch base, but they're calling it a wellness meeting. They're talking about, let's check in, let's make sure everyone's all right. They've got the tools they need, they've got the support they need, and then they can push forward. One of the things that I think is really key for employers and employees at the moment, though, is understanding each other's personalities, understanding what people's team roles are, understanding what people's learning styles are, understanding, is someone all about the detail, or is someone just give me the helicopter view and I'm off, And we use personality profiling for that. And I'm sure a lot of you guys listening will also have an understanding of what these people were like when you brought them into the organization. But revisit that, have little team chats when you talk about that, or even if you want to, redo the personality profiling.
What do they do with that, Meeta? What do they do with that?
Well, they can get in touch with us. That's something I'm offering for free.
I know you're definitely helping with people like that. But what do they do with that? So I do a personality test for my staff working at home, right? And I see how they're more productive. Or what do I do with that test?
Well, what you then do is you share it and you explain to a group of people, look, A works this way, B works that way. Mark prefers to listen. Michael prefers to join in a conversation. So let's all be supportive and understanding of where people are coming from. Won't necessarily be the way you are, but it doesn't mean there's a right or wrong. And what it overcomes is conflict, and what it maintains is culture, positive mindsets, a more successful business. And at the end of this, a group of people who really want to get back into working together rather than friction, and nobody wants that in this time. We are already.
If anybody's seen the news, our Prime Minister has got mild symptoms of coronavirus as well. Obviously, it came out yesterday about Prince Charles also having it. I would have thought there would have been like a ring fence around them. They're shaking hands. I suppose they're going around meeting people. I don't quite know how that's happened, but everybody, if they can be exposed, anybody can be exposed. So just do what you're supposed to do and stay indoors, I suppose.
Well, we're encouraging everyone to use for social interaction, as teams, there should still be incentives, there should still be shout outs for positive outcomes and magic moments. And we're actually doing a Maine cocktail hour at 4:00. Everyone's going to be on a screen, so we're using Zoom for that. Zoom can have up to 8, so maybe if it's a big company, you do it just on a team size, but everyone get a glass and toast to getting over another week and getting through without challenges for another week to come.
Anyone listening, don't call Meeta at 4:00.
Well, if you do, have a glass of whatever is your tipple. And we'll toast to getting through. And things are evolving as we go. By the time we get off this Q&A, there'll probably be something else that we need to share. So we've got about 5 minutes to go, Tosh. We've got
actually, Meeta, I think we said we would go for 30-40 minutes, right? And I think I don't think we're going to get through all of that, but why don't we in the next few minutes kind of going through the questions? Perhaps you could just pick some, Meeta, and we can just sort of go through it together.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. There's a question here about DSE. people who don't have desks, chairs, and suitable physical working environments. Some people may be living in a bedsit, and also some people will have skeletal issues. So how can we overcome challenges like that? How can we support them in that, Tosh?
It would be exactly the same situation if you were trying to get them to work from home in the first place. You would carry out, and it's a very small percentage of people that would have health and safety issues at home. If we're talking about disability or that sort of condition, that's a different thing already, because the disability would have been there before all this kicked off. So presumably there would have been reasonable adjustments in the workplace. Perhaps that can be transposed over to their home working conditions.
And that's a legal obligation, isn't it, of the client
it's a legal obligation to make sure that your employer provides an employee with a safe system of work and a safe place of work. So if that is not doable, well, then they're going to be furloughed, aren't they?
Right. So if they can't do their work from home, it would be a furloughed.
There's no work to do, they can't do it, then it's going to be given to somebody else.
Okay, thank you. Right, let's have a look. Oh, turns out Matt Hancock also has it. He's also COVID positive.
Oh boy. I'm assuming he's on this and he's not in any of the risk category. So I just wish you a speedy recovery. I hope you've got the very small symptoms of that.
Yeah.
Dominic loves Zoom.
It's great. I really recommend it.
Yeah, we use it as well.
What I was going to say was, anyone who's listening, if you want to understand your team better, please let me know. We are going to add a link to our personality profiling that we offer out to our clients, and we're going to do that free for this period of time for everyone. The more we know ourselves, the better employees and teammates we can be, and that only adds value back to the company. So that is something that we want to gift out to you guys today, and hopefully can be a tool that's of use to you going forward.
So what other questions have we got here, Meeta? I can see something from Lynn, which says, if a person has been sacked because no work or in anticipation of work falling off, can the employee be re-employed on a furlough basis? I think it means that. Yeah. The answer is yes. You can bring them back in. The government has said that it's for retained employees. You could bring them back in. They were going to be made redundant in those circumstances, as long as it is from the 28th of February onwards.
Okay. So if you had an employee that was, March was so uncertain, they were doing a bit of work, they weren't doing a bit of work, but you want to furlough them from the 1st, is that allowed? You can backdate it to the point of where you can demonstrate that there is no work available. The backdated provisions for payments are going back to the 1st of March. Fine.
So what we don't know is, what do we need to prove? What is the documentation to support a furloughed employee? So us employment lawyers we're guessing, well, what would you need to present? So you need to reproduce an agreement, a signed agreement. You show that it was done as an alternative to being made redundant. It's not just a case of, hey, everybody just go on a furloughed agreement and that's the end of it. There's got to be a context. The company won't, companies won't be able to just reclaim it willy-nilly. They've got to be able to show that there is no work for that employee, for that employee to do, and they're just sitting at home.
Well, somebody else is asking another version of that. What happens if the employer decides not to apply for the 80% scheme and just closes the doors until this all goes away? What rights would an employee have in that scenario?
It depends what closes the doors means. If you're shutting the business down, there's no employer. Well, that's the end of it.
Then there's no employer.
The scheme is an employer scheme, although it benefits the employees. So if they're closing the doors in that way, that's fine. If they're closing the doors but not closing the business, well, then they'll be eligible for to be furloughed.
Could a company or an organisation furlough every member of the business then?
I don't see why not. The issue at the moment is this, and I haven't got clarity on this. They're talking about two things. They're using the word grant and they're using the word repayment. So grant is the word that the Chancellor used in the first instance. Grant means it's money that they're giving to you. But that really obviously benefits people where you haven't got any money coming in you can't afford. Yeah. Now we're talking about repayment. So there's some companies who can actually pay the staff and they get 80% back. So I think it's only right that the scheme will be, if you can pay, you should pay.
Yeah.
And if you can pay, that doesn't mean you just run your business into the ground. Maybe you talk to your accountants and project what it is that you can last for by continuing with your payroll. And if you can't pay, you can't pay. But then again, you'd have to be able to prove that to the HMRC. So that again has to be your accountants producing your accounts, showing that there's no work coming in. Whatever it is, there's no hard and fast rule, and that's why we've had to furlough the employees. So why would we, if we're just closing the doors, I don't know why we are when they should be eligible to be furloughed.
Yeah, I think one of the things that will become clearer is, as this portal opens, we'll be able to start to see what questions are being asked, what evidence we have to give, and that may give people more clarity on who is or isn't furloughable, and I'm sure that's not even a real word. But
I'm not even sure furlough was particularly used before, but yes, well, I'll go with furloughable.
Yeah, but in the meantime, if organizations want to do that from today, they can, but it really be when the portal comes on that they will have criteria to complete.
Correct, yes. They need to go through that process, and don't be, it's the wrong thing to say, don't be scared. You know, we just don't know. So let's see what comes up, and then we'll handle it, because we have to.
Yeah. Another question here is around collective consultancy. So if an organization wants to furlough more than 20 people, do they have to do a collective consultancy similar to a redundancy process? So
the collective consultancy regulations, or the TOLC regulations, basically talk about redundancy scenarios. If you're changing them to a furlough status, I'm going to say that in the current circumstances, you don't need to worry about those consultation processes unless you're going to make them redundant. Because obviously, if they don't want to accept the furlough contract. So from a practical point of view, what I would suggest that companies do is have a grown-up conversation with their staff at the beginning.
Yeah.
Tell them we've got two choices. We're either going to be looking at a redundancy or we're going to put you as a furloughed employee. These are the two circumstances, what you will get if you choose option A or B.
Yeah.
If they choose option A or B, the furlough, well, that's great. You go straight into it and you've got some paperwork to back up how that arrangement's come into place. If they don't, well, then you'll go through the redundancy process anyway, which will then mean you'll go through your 30 days consultation period. So if it's 20 or more at risk of redundancy, 20 employees or more, then it's a 30-day consultation period. If it's 100 or more, it's a 45-day consultation period.
And that will all start at the end of the furlough period.
You can actually start it now.
Right.
If they want to do it now to show it as an alternative to it, and they can show that this is, because redundancy has to be the last reasonable resort in law. Yeah. And remember, this only applies to employees with more than 2 years. Employees with less than 2 years don't have the right to claim unfair dismissal anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
But again, if the government scheme is in place to protect people, why not? I mean, there might be an answer to that question, but I'm saying why not at the moment.
Yeah. There's a question, a practical question around entering information into the portal. Is it the employer or is it the accountant? I think you have to make sure that your accountant has the rights to access HMRC. That would be something that you would have given them permission to do. Otherwise, it will be you and somebody internally in your organization. So
I suspect most businesses will just want some professional help on it. I know our accountants, no doubt, will be as busy as hell when that portal comes up. And perhaps I think what you will see coming out of the woodwork will be easy guidelines or packages for people to do this for you or simplify it for you. So let's see what comes up. We should be, legislation that they're putting in place now normally takes years and they're doing it in weeks. So I know we can pick holes in what they're doing. We can do that all day long, but it's pretty amazing actually. So let's see what comes up is what I'm saying. And when it comes up, is it the employer or the accountant? It's up to you.
Yeah. So long as the accountant has been given permission with HMRC. So there's a little practical thing there.
Yeah. Normally employers will have signed something with their accountant. I mean, I have, so they have authority to act on our behalf. So I think that will be the case anyway.
Yeah. Can we touch a little bit on the self-employed? I know that this was really big because it took a very long time for the Chancellor to come out with any guidance and advice. But he's given a similar 80% criteria. So can you tell us a little bit about that? We've got probably about 3 or 4 more minutes.
Yeah, we'll answer. I'll do that very quickly. Maybe get one more question in, and then we'll see how we can sort of wrap this up for the next time. And obviously, as I said, we'll address all of these questions one way or another. Yeah. So the new scheme is similar to the furloughed employee scheme in the sense that people can get back at least 80% of their earnings, but it's for those up to a cap of $2,500. So it's similar to in that vein. Yeah. They'll need to produce accounts for the last 3 years. The Chancellor mentioned that I think it was put under one of the reporters under pressure, pressured him to answer, what happens if you only got 1 or 2, and they said they'll look at it.
Yeah.
It applies only to people who have got a revenue of £50,000 or less.
Right.
And the difference is that self-employed people can work while they are receiving that benefit.
Right. That's a very good point because I hadn't thought about that. So even if they do have ongoing, they can still claim for 3 months.
Correct.
Right. Interesting.
Again, we're waiting for the details of that, but that's what we've got so far.
Okay.
Have you got time for one more question, Meeta?
Yeah, let's have a look. So we've just got one. We've got Claudia asking us to clarify whether it's 80% taxable or not. We don't know the answer to that yet, do we?
I said it seems unlikely that they're going to give a benefit back that the tax man then takes money back again. So I think that seems perverse. I think the 80% is inclusive of wages, NI, national insurance contributions, and pension.
Okay. And we have another question around whether they would consider extending this furlough scheme after June.
Chancellor's already said that. There's no limit. They're looking at it in June. If it still needs to extend it further, then they said they will look at extending it further.
Okay, I've got a really good question here. So a lot of our clients have been asking us this as well. Can we furlough new hires planning to start with our firm in April, May, and June?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
I don't see why not. The issue will be, why are they suddenly brought some? I mean, if they're already on the books, they're already being paid, there isn't a time limit.
No. This is people that hadn't started, people that hadn't started, who had a start date of the 1st of April. But because, yeah.
So they were going to start the job. Now there's no work for them. It's to avoid a redundancy situation. Technically speaking, they should be eligible. I guess in any ordinary circumstances, if the work dropped, you just wouldn't take them on.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid I'm going to have to say I don't know. Let's find out. Well, that's sort of a more specific kind of question. When we go through the forms, we'll find out, I suppose. Yeah.
And there'll be more guidance. And as there is, we'll update you all to keep you on top of all this confusion. Some clarity, but still some confusion.
One more thing about this portal, I can see Claudia is asking a couple of times. So when is it coming up? It should be coming up next week. I mean, as I say, I think it's a little bit like the Kennedy scenario. Boris has just sort of put it out there and said, put a man on the moon. Boris has said, just get this scheme up and running, and the HMRC are working like round the clock to get it sorted out. So we don't know, but I'm hoping we're looking at it for next week.
Yeah. Can I ask you one more question? It's around fixed term contracts that were due to come to an end in April. What will happen to people in that scenario under the furlough scheme?
Same thing. They're still employees. They're PAYE. They will be entitled to 80% of their income up until the 3 months from the 1st of March.
So even though the contract will end at the end of April,
if it ends at April, that's the end of it. Unless there's a renewal of some sort, or that would normally happen. Kind of, in fact, sort of case specific. Yeah. If it, when you say a fixed term contract, I don't know if that's the first time they've had it, or whether it's been a rolling contract for many, many years. There'll be a different scenario then. But all other things being equal, if it's fixed, that's normally ending with something in mind.
Yeah.
Building of a building, or a time frame, or whatever the reason that the job is, in which case the coverage will only be for the fixed term period.
What has already been agreed in writing in contract.
Correct.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Tosh. There are a lot. Okay, one question here is, how do we get the furlough document?
So what's going to happen is, so I think we'll wrap up with the questions now, right? I'll answer that one right now.
There's definitely a few more.
What's going to happen is, Meeta and I are going to go through these questions together. And what we will do is we'll send out a video to you all answering all of these questions so nothing gets missed. Is the first thing. With that, when you get the recording of this video as well, you're going to get a copy of a free download of a furlough agreement and a home working policy, courtesy of Daniel Barnett, one of the leading employment law barristers in the UK. So those are the two things there, which I've got with his permission. And that's how you're going to get it.
I'll also attach the personality profiling link. So anybody that wants to do that for their teams, please go ahead and do so. And
one more thing I'd like to say is, we're also going to find out from you during this week what it is you want us to talk about. Maybe you want to hear more about furloughed employees. Maybe you need more details, or maybe you want to know more about working from home, or whatever matters to you in your business. How you're dealing with your staff, or whatever issues you're dealing with. So we'll find out what it is you need to know, what matters to you, and we will address those things very clearly in next week. We're doing this is part 1 of 4, and we'll see how that goes. And if that's of interest to people, we'll keep doing it, Meeta, I guess.
Yeah, we'd like to. We understand the uncertainty and the ever-changing face of business and charitable and not-for-profit organizations, all in the same boat. Everyone definitely has questions that need answering. And we, Tosh, you and I have the benefit of talking to a lot of the business community. So any of that we can bring back to you all here, we want to do that. So we look forward to seeing all of you, hopefully again this time next week. And in the meantime, as Tosh said, please do fill out those feedback forms. That will make sure that the time you give to this session will be super useful to you. And as Tosh said, we will definitely come back to you on those questions. And you'll also have our links with questions in the meantime. Please feel free to get in touch in between.
One more thing, Meeta, I want to say is, don't wait till next week. If you've got problems right now, we're easily contactable. All our details are out there with this link as well, and with the videos and webinars and so forth. You know, Meeta, there's lots of professionals out there that are genuinely just trying to do a good thing. You know, we're also, you know, making money on certain things. We have to make a living like everybody else, but we know what the struggle is. And I think the idea of sharing information when there's so much out there and just filtering it down to what is really helpful is what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we succeeded a little bit. I mean, there's some lovely messages there at the moment, so I appreciate that already.
Awesome. Thank you, Tosh.
Thank you, Meeta. I think thank you mainly. I think you set this up. So thank you so much. We'll see you again next week.
See you then. Thank you all.
Bye bye. Bye bye.